Hi, everybody. This is Daniel Gonzalez, and welcome to Practical Ministry. And I am once again joined by Pastor Norman Howell. Hi, Pastor Norman.
Thank you, kind sir. Good to be with you.
How you doing today?
We're blessed.
Ah, that's great. That's wonderful to hear. That's wonderful to hear. It's hot, but we're surviving this desert.
It's a normal day.
Well, today we're going to be talking about something that I think makes people feel very uncomfortable.
Uh-oh. It's either sex or money. I don't know.
Oh, you hit it on the second one there. It's 100% money.
Okay.
We're going to be talking about finances, and we're going to be talking about finances in the church. And so the idea was to kind of help people understand how finances work in the church because, again, they come in, they see you on Sunday, they see you for about 30 or 40 minutes, and
one whole segment is bring your first fruits of your income and worship God with it.
And that'll be like 10 minutes, and they're kind of like, oh, gosh. I know when I first came here 16 years ago, my mother would tell me this all the time. We were practicing Catholics, which means no disrespect to people that were actually practicing, but
I'd like to know what you think.
We were Latinos that we would go to church when something bad happened. Maybe we went on Christmas if the rest of the family went, and maybe we went on Easter if we weren't supposed to already be at someone's house. And that was our version of Catholicism. And so when I came over and I became a Christian when I was about 16 or 17, my mother said, stop it. Like, they're just out to take your money.
Uh-huh.
And then I got older and I started really tithing. And my mother said, stop it. Like, they're taking your money. Like, what are you doing this for? And I was like, Mom, I think you just don't get it. And so I said, you know what, let me not be foolish, though. Let me start digging a little bit myself. Mm-hmm. And I started understanding how finances worked in the church. And so that was the reason that I wanted to bring this topic up, which is I think there's a lot of people out there that still don't understand how finances work in the church, whether it be ministry, whether it be what they give in tithes. And so I kind of wanted to discuss that with you. But to get started with it again, as I said, our perspective, I know a lot of my friends are jaded. Incredibly jaded.
Sounds like a song.
They're incredibly jaded, and they think the same thing. Like, they're all out to get you, and they're all out to make a dime.
They're really not jaded. They're ignorant. Mm-hmm. They don't know this whole story.
Well, I'll tell you this much, though. There is a lot of people over the last 10 or 15 years that have been exposed. And a lot of ministries where people were abusing those people. And a lot of people came out saying, my pastor said that I'm not a part of this church unless I give a huge down payment on this, or I help him buy his car. And it was like, geez. And so we were talking before the podcast, it's that minority voice, that voice as in the people that are not the biggest group, because the biggest group is probably just saying, oh, I have a good time at my church, everything's fine. It's that small minority that's saying I'm being abused. And then we hear those stories.
That would be a horrible thing.
And we think that's everything. And at least my friends did. It's all of them then. They're all guilty. They all do that stuff.
We do that. We make those generalizations across the board. That's a problem in our society today. At one time, they did these surveys, who are the most respected people in society.
Sure.
And it used to be clergy, different types of leaders, but it has changed, and we live in a very cynical society, and I get it. There have been some terrible abuses, but you'll find abuse in every system, but that doesn't, I know this is a cliche, but you don't throw the baby out with the dirty bath water. You just change the water.
Sure. No, that makes sense. I was talking to Pastor Sandra about it one day, and I said one of the things I taught my students was, as jaded as it sounds, as cynical as it sounds, I was like, the one thing that was common amongst all travesties that we know of in this world, all travesty, whether it be in the church, in war, was humanity. Didn't matter if it was religion, didn't matter if it was business on Wall Street. The one common denominator amongst all of it, people.
Yeah.
And people are broken people.
Absolutely. And so, including clergy, including car salesmen, including plumbers, including everybody, all of us.
Yeah. So I think from our perspective, we do want to know if you're the real deal. We want to know, like, hey, listen, I'm willing to give for a good cause. Especially the millennials and Gen Z, very much so.
Yeah.
We'll be out there with you picketing, and we'll fight with you, but we just don't trust you.
It's a hard place to live, though.
Yeah, absolutely. My question is, has this been a common thing, though, amongst all the generations? Like when you were growing up, was there that same feeling? I know you had mentioned previously, no, there was a respect to clergy, but there had to have been people that didn't trust.
There's always been mistakes made, and there's always been people that have disappointed us.
Mm-hmm.
I get that. I would say we are in a more difficult place when it comes to communicating to a younger generation the importance of the principles of giving.
Sure.
Because in the end, we serve people whether they give or they don't give. Somebody was asking me this a while ago, well, how much do you charge for a funeral? I said, I've never charged for a funeral.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes my team members might need something to be able to accomplish A, B, or C process, but I'm here to serve. So there is a different mentality. But at the same time, these lights don't come on. I don't have any tax money. And see, this is where it confuses people. Freely give, freely receive. Nobody charges you to come in this door.
Yeah.
We serve you whether you give or not. And sadly, I don't know the exact percentage,
Mm-hmm.
but let's say 25% of the people do 85% of the work.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's a same
And
in business.
85% of the giving.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that just want to slip by and they just want to throw something in there.
Sure.
And God loves people,
Mm-hmm.
and we love people. So we're not here trying to, check at the door to see whether you give or not. When they do the accounting work, I try not to even know who gave what.
Yeah.
I see an overall report over the year because I have to place trust in certain leaders.
Yeah.
And if they can't basically do the 101 basic kind of obedience fundamentals, then perhaps I shouldn't place them in a position of leadership.
Yeah, to
That
lead
doesn't-
other people.
That doesn't mean that they're not have opportunities to serve.
Yeah.
But it's very important that we approach it from a different perspective. We're not required to. We're going to serve you either way, but you get the privilege of giving, and it's a principle. It's not a law. I'm not, cursing anyone if they don't give.
Sure. No, I hear that. Absolutely. Well, here's a tough one, and I don't want you to incriminate anybody, but this would be something that would be great for people to hear is, as you've been in ministry for quite a while now, and correct me when I'm wrong, it was more than 50, correct? More than 50 years?
A long time.
It was more than 50.
About 50 years.
Okay.
Oh, good Lord have mercy.
Over the course of 50 years,
Yes.
and I think this would be awesome if it was true, if people knew. Have you met people that have abused in the ministry that have abused people financially? And
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, that's great to know that you would even say that. Yeah, it's
Oh,
like okay, yeah,
absolutely.
they are out there.
Yeah, and cynical people and people that were operating out of fear. Oftentimes, it's people operating out of fear because they're afraid they're going to get cheated.
Huh.
So we have always approached it that I'm not dependent on you. I'm dependent upon God.
Yeah.
Many years ago, different world, different times now, but years ago we were doing these meetings up in another city in the U.S. Okay,
Sure.
Dallas, I think it was, and we held services every night for 2 weeks.
Okay.
And the pastor said, "Well, we work on a percentage basis, so we'll take 50%, you take 50% each night on offerings."
Okay.
And we said, "We're just not comfortable with that. Why don't you take all of the offerings every night,
Okay.
all week long,
Mm-hmm.
and just give us one offering? And whatever comes in that one offering, give it 100% to our ministry,
Okay.
and you take everything else."
What was the reasoning behind that? That's a really interesting perspective.
To place it on God's fulfillment for what we needed, instead of us manipulating the people. We didn't want to manipulate anyone.
Mm-hmm.
We just wanted to take up an offering. Tonight's offering is 100% for this ministry. If you've been blessed,
All right.
you give what God places
Now
in
I
your
get it.
heart.
So instead of them being like,
You
oh,
know,
I didn't know I
well,
was giving to Norman and Sandra.
Yeah,
Like,
instead of we're raising this for Haiti, or we're raising this for this,
Yeah.
or we're raising it for the other.
Wow.
You can do whatever you want the whole time. Just give us one offering.
Wow.
But it all 100%, whatever comes in, if it's $100, and it's cost us $1,500 to be here, then fine. But if it's $5,000, then it's ours.
Wow. I've never even thought of that perspective. The idea that we could be giving to something. We thought we were giving to this, and the portion of it was going to someone else.
Oh yeah.
Wow. Wow.
And
Jeez,
they were in fear. They said, well, but you might not get anything.
They might not like you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I said, that's okay. God's going to take care of us. And it was actually a lesson for them that they didn't need to be fearful. And, you know, we got a record offering. And they were just like, wow, we need to do this all the time. I said, no, you're missing the point. You know, and we were able to, you know, walk out of there very blessed.
That's a lesson.
And didn't worry about it.
That's a lesson right there. Jeez Louise. I've never thought about that.
But here's the thing, that you've got to have a healthy heart for giving.
Sure.
This equipment here.
Mm-hmm.
Over the years, I've seen different churches be in a crisis situation. Our speakers blew up. Can we borrow your speakers? Can we borrow this equipment or that equipment? You know, and some of our team would say, well, hey, you know, it's really been hard to get this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, people misuse things. But we've always taken the attitude, if you ask for it, we're going to bless you with it. And, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead,
if we can do it, we'll help you out.
We'll help you out.
Yeah.
And as I believe, part of the result of that is we've always been blessed, and God has always provided for us when we've needed help. And so we take that attitude.
Well, that's a great transition there. That's a good question, because a lot of us, at least when I was growing up, I definitely just gave to the point where I didn't have anything some days. And it was just be like, that was all the money I had in my wallet and this and that. And as
But you were probably not dependent upon, you didn't have to worry about 3 children and a mortgage.
Precisely.
And
No, my mother paid for that then.
Yes.
But God bless that woman. She was, I mean, my mother's a saint. She had the mercy of a saint. Like,
Yes.
amazing woman. But I say all that to say this. I had a perspective on giving, which was just give everything. Just give everything. And I ended up in Bible school giving all of my money.
Yeah.
And I had no food. And my mom, I was too ashamed to call her. I was like, I don't want to call her. Like, I can't call her. Like, this is my problem. And I said, well, God, you'll provide for me. And I think I learned a lesson there, which was, I got to eat, man. Like, I gotta be able to eat. And what am I going to do if I don't have food?
Did God provide?
Well, that was a glory to God moment there, because
go.
an aunt that I had not heard of in years said, hey, honey, we heard you're in town. We want to drop something off for you. And dropped off 2 trunks full of food.
Absolutely.
Which I think God did, because, listen, genius, maybe you should buy a burger before you give your money away. Here's some food. Don't ever do it again. And I wanted to ask about that nuance there, is because when you grow up, you become responsible for more things, right? I'm responsible for my wife now.
Absolutely.
And I can't just give like that anymore.
No. Yeah.
And you and Pastor Sandra are responsible for so much. And if you don't have speakers, if you give away all your money and the lights don't go on, we got a problem. And where's that nuance of that balance between being a good steward and using wisdom of what God gave you and saying, we're going to stretch it a little bit here, but we're still okay? Like, are you supposed to be all the way here on this polar of just, we're going to give and I hope God shows up and I hope the lights turn on?
No.
Or are you all the way over here like, well, too bad for them. We took care of ourselves.
We have a budget sheet
Okay.
every month.
Mm-hmm.
And I have an employee that's their job.
Sure.
Is to make sure we stay in budget.
Okay.
Now, are there times when, Jesus, please help us now, Lord? Of course there are.
Okay.
We've always taken the attitude, because of our sense of responsibility, we've never gotten to the place where we were not able to pay our staff.
Okay.
But our assistant has instructions that if anyone's salary gets cut, it's ours.
That's something to know.
You know,
Yeah,
and so
you cut from the top then.
that's right.
Yeah,
that's
very
right.
Tom Brady, like, I'll take the pay cut. Yeah.
Good example.
This is not endorsed by Tom Brady, but sure, he was a famous one of saying, "Listen,
Yeah,
I want
yeah.
those players.
Yeah.
Take my pay cut. I
Aaron
just want
Rodgers
more. I
did
want
it
more
this year
rings."
as
Yeah,
well. Yeah,
he did the same
exactly.
thing with the Jets. Yeah,
That's right.
hmm
Yeah.
But okay, that's really good to know. So then, you would advise for those in ministry to not push it to the limit. Like you
Well,
need to
what
have a
is-
budget. You need to take care of your people.
Oh, absolutely.
And then if you got the money to give, then you give.
Be wise as a serpent, the Bible says, but harmless as doves.
Sure.
We operate this church as a business in the sense of we've got to take care of our responsibilities. Thank God. I don't say this boastfully at all.
Sure.
But we've not bounced checks. God has been very gracious and good to us. So sometimes it takes us longer to get certain things done because we don't have tax money. We don't have a guaranteed source
Yeah.
except God. And so we have to prime the pump by our giving. This church pays tithes just like we receive tithes from you and for those that work. This church also pays tithes out and gives money away to ministries that we are not responsible for. And once we give that money, let's say we give $1,000 this month to XYZ ministry
Sure.
in Nicaragua. To the best of my knowledge, I'm doing so because God spoke to my heart and because I feel comfortable and I feel like they have a good ministry.
Yeah.
But once I give it, it's out of my hands.
Yeah.
What you do with it is between you and God. You have to answer to God,
Yeah.
and that's the attitude that we take. And God has backed us up, and He's blessed us.
So there's wisdom to that. Then you
Oh,
have
yeah.
a budget. You take care of your people.
Yes.
And then, but you said that's really interesting. I don't think anyone's ever heard that. You tithe off of what people give and take care of others as well.
Absolutely.
So there's a structure to it.
Yeah, I think 14% of our budget last year went out to other than us here at the Crossroads.
I think a lot of people don't know these things.
Yeah.
And they just think it goes straight into the pockets. And it's like, no, there's
And
a structure.
We're not a huge ministry, but we're very blessed.
Yes,
and
sir.
so we've been able to give some amazingly good amounts of money. And we don't loan money.
Yeah.
This is not a loaning institution, but we are there to help people in crisis.
Sure.
We've kept people who are members, tithe-paying members of this church, and they've gone through a crisis for whatever reason, and we all go through them at times.
Yeah.
And we've helped them and kept them from having to go under or having to declare bankruptcy.
Jeez.
Not saying that I'm going to do that for you this week, whoever's watching this. But we have done it a number of times to help people, and it's kept them from going under. And that's just part of the ministry. That's why I believe in belonging to the body of Christ.
Yeah.
We're in this together. I have no hidden deep agenda. We're open to inspection, and so that's cool.
You know, that's something we talked about in literature years ago when I was getting my master's, is that multiple cultures, especially when the United States was really coming up, and you can probably talk about it a little bit more than me to some degree, but they had that idea of like the Italians stayed with the Italians, the Koreans stayed with the Koreans, and if you needed money, you didn't go to a bank, you didn't do that.
No.
You went to the people in your neighborhood, and there was like a pot that everybody kind of took from, and you all kind of put in
Well,
on.
you were held responsible by them because you didn't want to be rejected by them.
Absolutely.
And there are actual strengths to that. It's not such a bad thing.
It's a family. It's a giant family.
It's a familia.
Pues es una familia. That's right. Like, we're a giant family here in
You
Crossroads.
can't refuse.
But absolutely. Well, that's awesome. I mean, that's something I think people don't know that we do, or that ministries do. And maybe that's a thing for if someone's in another city and they go, I don't know about this place. It's asking those questions of like,
It's
who do you
scary.
take care of?
But I'll see parents drop their kids off here to be ministered to,
Sure.
and they don't check it out. I go, that's insane. You need to know, you need to understand, you need to get a feel for the people you're coming into covenant with.
Yeah.
It's not just some legally binding agreement.
Yeah.
You know, in a lot of relationships, it's legalese.
Yeah.
But we go a step farther than that. and we care about the heart.
Yeah.
And so it's got to be a even higher standard.
You know, my pops was in SA and in San Antonio, excuse me. My father
Suburb of Laredo.
was in San Antonio, and he said that one day, one of the pastors for a church, we won't say their names, just be respectful, but he said, listen, we're going to pick up an offering right now. Just come up, leave some money on the altar, whatever you can.
Okay.
And then he said, okay, those of you that need it, just come on up.
We've done it here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was so much fun.
And my father said,
We saw thousands of dollars exchanged in one day.
my dad said, well, and I grew up with that kind of a dad. He never cried a tear, you know? And he said, I just couldn't help but cry. I just could not believe what people were capable of, in a good sense.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that people would do this, and it just broke me down. And I said, man, dude, like, how hard is it outside? And it's like, there is something beautiful about being part of that family.
But I also believe in a principle. I live by principle.
Sure.
And that the Lord doesn't require 90% of your money.
Yeah.
He said the first fruits, the first 10% belongs to the house.
Yeah.
And so you are part of a congregation and you pay that 10%. That is, in a religious sense, my basic responsibility.
That makes sense.
Then beyond that, God will speak to your heart, but I'm not going to make you feel guilty or you're going to get cancer if you don't, do this or none of that jazz.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, and it's about, again, being a part of that family. It's just saying, like, I'm here, I'm going to help, but I'm also going to need help one day, and we're here together.
And I need to be open and honest, and not do some song and dance. Certainly don't manipulate people.
Sure.
I've got to trust that we're in this together and that God will speak to your heart. And if he doesn't, God, and it's happened as well, that God will speak to someone outside of this place.
Yeah.
He will get done. This is his work. It's not mine.
Yeah, I get you. I hear you. Well, I got one transition here I think you're going to like, because when I was younger, I got excited because we would hear, when I went to Bible school, we'd hear to everyone, like, give, and you need to start giving 60. You need to give 80.
Yeah.
And I was like, heck yeah, I'll give my mother's money.
So kind of you.
Because that's really what it was. And then I grew up, and I remember I was like, I can't live off of this. I'm giving 80%, 70%. I was like, I just got to keep trusting God.
That was her faith. God blessed her.
I remember coming and talking to Pastor Sandra about it one day, and she said, sweetie, one day when you get there, you can do it, but you're not there yet. And I said, okay, that was some wisdom that I needed to hear. And so would you recommend for a lot of people, like, listen, when you're getting started, just stick to 10%. That's all that God's asking for. But if you get to a place where you're like, you got the money, go ahead and give whatever you want.
If you can be consistent with 5%, start with 5%.
Sure.
But be consistent.
Be consistent.
Don't just throw something in. Think about it and say, okay, Lord, I'm going to partner with you.
Gotcha.
And I'm going to believe God. Yes, you should get to 10%. And ideally, and I've seen this happen, but I'm talking about people that are mature.
Sure.
To where they give 20 and 30 and 40%.
Which when you're younger, you're like, 20%. And you get older, you're like, crap, 20% of my, 30% of my check, like,
But how much does Uncle Sam take?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, when you see taxes, that hurts.
Yeah, and I think we get much more healthy return on the dollar than oftentimes you see in the government, which is a whole nother story.
But there was wisdom in that. Is that, like, when you're growing up, it's just like, just get used to giving. And then one day when you make it, go ahead. You give the 20, the 30, and 40. Would you say that's just wise?
Well, you start out where you're at and just learn to be consistent.
And giving with a cheerful heart, I'm guessing.
Oh, absolutely.
You better be happy about giving it.
Yeah, we have turned people down.
Really?
Yeah. I said, no, you know what?
That's an interesting story.
Yeah.
Without naming names, but you turned them down because?
Well, they just weren't in a position. I was afraid that they were going to bounce their check. Jeez. And what's the point? Because they're going to get charged $30 or whatever for that bounce check.
See, but that's Daniel at 18. Like, I'm just going to give and God's going to show up.
That's not healthy. That's not good. I have a responsibility to protect you.
Wow.
as an under shepherd.
That's something I don't think these people know, that you've said no. Like,
Oh, absolutely.
We're not going to accept this right now.
Yeah,
I'm trying to
it's
keep
not-
you
yeah,
safe.
That's right. That's right.
Wow. Okay. That's a great story. That's a great
But
lesson.
It doesn't happen that often.
Well, you know, praise God. Praise God for that.
Mostly at the other end of the spectrum. So,
But then the last thing I want to ask you, because we're
Shoot.
coming in for a close here, and this is a fun one, is that you guys are in the middle of this giant project. It's a huge project that you guys are
Yeah.
doing. If it's okay that I can explain,
Absolutely. Sure.
it's a $1
Go for it.
million project. Plus.
And really, it's if I wasn't the superintendent, supervisor of it, if it was done in the school district, it would have been triple that amount.
Sure.
So it would have been 3.2 million or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is why we're asking you these questions.
Yeah.
But the question is this: is that a young minister coming in, saying, "Oh, we got to build. We're going to get our $1 million building."
Mm-hmm.
When do you have that wisdom to say, we can take that weight?
It takes time. You just don't go into something like that. You have to start at a much smaller place. You might need to believe God for rent this month instead of, or believing God for an amplifier, or believing God for that keyboard.
Sure.
That is where you're at. When we entered into this and we made our boast in God, and we said, we're not going to get a loan for this new 8,400 square foot addition. It's a
The
big
new
addition,
building. Okay.
yeah. But then I'm putting it on Jesus, and so I couldn't take it back. Then we poured the foundation, and then the pandemic hit. Everything dried up. We couldn't even meet in this building, let alone build another one.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it took a whole year. Everything stopped for a whole year. It's been 4 years since we poured our foundation. And then 1 year when there was nothing happening after we poured. And then slowly we began to build up again and start again. And we'd go a few months and we'd build, and then we'd stop, and then nothing would happen for 3 months, and we'd build again.
Yeah.
And now we are 98% finished. We have a beautiful building. It's really done. Now it's just a matter of dealing with the city, with the
Sure.
fire alarms and all that kind of stuff.
Well, here's a practical one. You guys started in a hotel here in Laredo.
Yeah.
Okay. You started in a hotel, and here's the practical. What was the sign that you and Pastor Sandra had that you said, all right, we're building? What was it? You looked out in the crowd and you said, okay, we've got the numbers. Or you looked out and you said, I'm looking at the budget. I think we can manage it. Or you woke up
It's
one morning
all
and it
of
was
the
like, it's the
above.
building.
You know, we were renting. What happened was we were renting spaces, and we were spending like $1,600 a month. But then we kept adding more spaces at a strip mall, where we kept expanding, and it was right during the downturn of the economy, and there was a lot of these businesses that disappeared overnight.
What
and
year
so
was this? Around the 70s, 80s?
80s, yeah, 84, 85.
Got it.
And we started in October of 83.
Okay.
And then there was a big downturn, and the bank took a chance on us in giving us a lease. But then all these other businesses were disappearing, and we were the only ones that were faithful in paying. See, this is a big key. We were faithful no matter what. If I owed it to you, I paid it to you. 30 days, I paid you your money. And they saw that. And so we kept adding spaces, and all of a sudden from 1,600 to 2,700 to all of a sudden we were spending $4,000 a month in rent. And we got this brilliant revelation. Well, why aren't we applying this to something that is more permanently ours?
And you had the money to cover the rent, obviously.
Obviously.
And it wasn't tight. It was like, we can afford this. So that's where it was like, we can afford this. We have the budget, and we're expanding so much, we might as well
But
build.
we didn't have enough to buy our own land. We had enough to pay the monthly, but to have the money to pay, because we were looking at land and they were wanting $1 million cash, you know.
Okay, so
it's
that's
like-
got to stop you guys in your tracks then.
It kept us moving forward and kept us on our knees.
Okay.
And that's when God sovereignly provided the land that we ended up with, which is a whole other story.
So you just waited then until that opportunity arose, and you said, all right.
Well, we kept knocking and searching and trying, and I can name you all kinds of places throughout the neighborhood here
Yeah.
where we looked at land and it was all impossible until the one place that God opened up.
And how long was that growth consistent for? Was it a year that you saw? We were just growing exponentially. Was it 2 years that you saw? We just keep growing. We got to build. Like,
From 83 to 1990 is when we came into this.
7 years
Yeah.
that you saw this, and that was the process.
You know, interesting, in the face of the community,
Uh-huh.
it took about 7 years for the community to realize these are legitimate people.
Sure.
This is a legitimate church.
Yeah.
And I don't expect them to take it at face value.
Mm-hmm.
I expect a certain amount of cynicism. And we had to prove ourselves that
Sure,
we
we
were
were talking about it
legit,
earlier.
that we're going to be there for people, we're going to be there for families,
Yeah.
that we're not running away when times get tough.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, once you build that kind of trust, then there's other people that say, you know what, I'm willing to take a chance on these people.
So that's what it was. It took 7 years to build a community of trust,
Yeah.
a community of growth,
Yes.
and all of a sudden,
Commitment.
everything just lined up. The iron was hot.
Yeah. Well, you know, you know, when God opens the doors, you got to know when to move.
Yeah, and you step through. Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's something I think a lot of people, a lot of these young people that have those home churches that are, you know, maybe that's some wisdom to learn from, because it's just like, we'll just go and get the loan immediately.
No. No.
Don't get the loan.
No. Just because you qualify doesn't mean you should have it. You know, because then you are living for the purpose of making a payment. And that puts a lot of pressure on people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to live for the purpose of making payments to the bank.
Yeah,
I want to fulfill our mandate before God.
sure.
And if we're doing it out of the trunk of the car, that's okay. If we're doing it in our home, if we are doing it on the beach,
Yeah.
if we're doing it out at the lake, that's okay. God spent a lot of time out by the water, you know, and
Sure.
he didn't own a building. You know, we live in a world now where, for a lot of reasons, you need to have your own place to be able to function and have a plant that offers opportunity for community and family and faith.
Well, I think this episode has so many lessons.
Oh, we're just scratching the surface. We can do 4 parts on it.
Thank you so much for being here, sir. I
My
appreciate
pleasure.
all of it.
God bless.